Hi there, my name is Nathan Ball, Head of Game Design at AdInMo, and I, like many others, have been waiting a long time for this game. Elden Ring is, at first glance, a strange combination of elements. It mixes FromSoftware's trademark intricate level design with a massive free-form open world, their signature grimdark style of fantasy with a more traditional heroic high fantasy. While it may sound like this new direction compromises the soul, if you will, of what we've come to understand as a FromSoftware game, it's a testament to their ability as a developer that they've managed to maintain the essential feeling of their previous games despite these major changes. And, even more impressively, have managed to leverage them into an experience that is just as, if not more, compelling than their previous efforts. The switch to open world is obviously the most significant iteration that Elden Ring delivers on the core From formula, and it carries it off expertly. The world is huge and sprawling, yes, but it's also densely packed, and you're never more than a minute away from a significant encounter you can tell your friends about later. Elden Ring may just be the ultimate water cooler game, and the experience of discovering it for the first time alongside other players online, and seeing them reference areas and enemies I haven't yet encountered myself, has been wonderful. The game really succeeds in giving the content you discover through exploration real meaning. The reasons for this are twofold. The content itself, which ranges from groups of enemies escorting treasure wagons in the overworld, to full-blown optional dungeons with their own enemy types and bosses, and the rewards for engaging with this content, which include new spells, weapons, permanent character upgrades, and more. The addition of Ashes of War, objects you can use to change the special attack and stat scaling of your weapons, helps a lot in this regard, giving FromSoftware a lot more to work with in terms of meaningful rewards to dish out. The combination of these elements creates an open world game that never feels like it's wasting your time. Where many games in the genre suffer from an overabundance of simplistic fetch quests with paltry rewards, Elden Ring shifts the responsibility for adventure to the player, letting them set their own quests and discover the many substantial rewards the world has to offer in their own time and on their own terms. At the time of writing, I've been playing for around 30 hours, and while most of that time has been spent exploring outside of the main story progression path, none of it felt like meaningless grinding or busy work. I always felt engaged, and I was always discovering something new. Some early critics of the game have expressed concerns that the switch to open world has compromised the tight, interconnected level design that fans have come to expect in a FromSoftware title, but closer inspection quickly dispels such doubts. Not only is the world itself tightly designed and carefully laid out, especially in comparison to other modern open worlds, but the game's dungeons are also just as intricate and well designed as they always have been, with early Gauntlet Stormvale Castle easily measuring up to some of the best individual levels in past games. The main difference here is that, as excellent as it is, Stormvale Castle is just one small rectangle on Elden Ring's unfathomably massive world map. The major shift to open world has necessitated a lot of smaller changes to support it, the most notable of which is the addition of a horse for the player. This serves the dual function of reinforcing the new high fantasy leanings of the game, giving the player a literal noble steed to ride around on, and also enables the sheer size of the world map, letting you cross great distances in seconds and double jump to navigate vertical cliffs and settlements. It's an excellent bit of multi-purpose game design, and it also brings a new dimension to combat in the overworld, letting you engage massive foes with huge area of effect attacks on footing that feels a lot more fair than in previous FromSoftware titles. The idea of giving the player a lot of options in combat permeates every inch of Elden Ring. Previous FromSoftware titles have always been fairly flexible in this regard, but it's taken to another level here. Not only do you have more options in terms of weapons and armour due to the open world making so much accessible early on, but you also have more options in terms of techniques you can use within combat itself. Jumping is now mapped to a dedicated button rather than being confined to an awkward combination of presses, and as a perk of this promotion, jump attacks are now available to the player, letting you avoid certain moves while delivering blows with a high chance to stagger your foes. This alone is a major change, but when you factor in horse combat and the ability to switch up your moveset using Ashes of War at any time, you have a combat system that lets players truly express themselves on the canvas of combat. Provided, of course, that all their brushstrokes are in red. This flexibility is important because Elden Ring, as many have said and will say again, is a very challenging game. And I say this as a massive FromSoftware fan who has played nearly all of their previous titles to completion. It's definitely hard enough to put off a more casual audience, no matter what the marketing and discourse surrounding the game would have you believe, but it's also flexible and open enough to allow anyone to get through it, if they're willing to engage, take their time, and learn how the game works. It can be demoralising to throw yourself against a difficult boss or area for hours at a time to no avail, but Elden Ring does more than any other FromSoftware title to provide you with alternative paths if you do find yourself hitting a wall. You can simply take a break, explore elsewhere, defeat some weaker bosses, and come back fresh and better prepared next time. All of this excellent exploration in combat is underpinned by a swirling layer of typically mysterious FromSoftware narrative, bringing with it a story of corrupted lands, fallen gods, and global decay that will be familiar, but welcome, to fans. There's been no small noise made about the involvement of legendary Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin in the creation of this narrative, and his masterful touch can be clearly seen in the mythos surrounding the game's world and characters. If you're willing to look for it, of course. In classic FromSoftware fashion, you'll glean very little about the game's story just by playing, and you'll need to delve deep into item descriptions and NPC dialogue to even begin to understand the full extent of what's going on. The fact that the game manages to retain this sense of mystery while also making the player feel like a traditional fantasy hero is an excellent showcase of the balancing act that's been perfected in the delivery of this game. If you're feeling a bit lost or overwhelmed by this abundance of options and vague narrative, Elden Ring extends you a helping hand in the form of its online multiplayer component, brought over wholesale from previous FromSoftware titles. Players can summon each other for help with challenging sections, or invade each other for a bit of gleeful murder if the mood strikes. These options, combined with the endless meme factory that is the player message system, make the game feel bustling and alive. Most zones are littered with messages and the transient phantoms of your distant fellow adventurers, and it can be strangely encouraging to see player bloodstains covering the ground in an area where you're struggling yourself. A macabre reminder that you're not suffering alone. When the dust on the battlefield has settled, and when people are able to look at Elden Ring clearly, divorced from the launch window opinion storm that so easily sways the general feeling on a game, I think they'll realise that the hype was, in this rare instance, justified. I feel comfortable calling Elden Ring a masterpiece, the kind of game that will be pored over, examined, and most importantly played for decades to come. Last year, Dark Souls was awarded the ultimate game of all time at the Golden Joystick Awards, beating out every other title released in the last 50 years of gaming to claim the crown. But Dark Souls was just the start of the journey. Looking at the sheer scale, depth and quality of Elden Ring, it's easy to think that the journey has now reached its end, and that the medium as a whole has crested the summit. While this is likely not true, and while another game will likely surpass Elden Ring in the years to come, It's hard to deny that the view from this summit is spectacular indeed. I've been Nathan Ball. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.